Hello all and welcome to Supernova Theories and Videos. Today I am going to be diving into what some would say is the most influential battle in all of Star Wars, Duel of the Fates, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn versus Darth Maul, a fight so important that George Lucas has said that if Qui-Gon survived, Anakin would not have fallen to the dark side. Personally, I don't know how much I really believe that, because while I firmly believe that Qui-Gon would have been a better master for Anakin than Obi-Wan was, especially at this time in Obi-Wan's life, the seeds of the dark side were there with Anakin from the very beginning, but I'll touch more on that later. For now, I want to focus on the duel itself, and more specifically, this moment here. So at this point, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon have been separated, and if it's anything like Maul and Qui-Gon's first duel, Qui-Gon is starting to get tired, so he could just be meditating in this moment to try to recover like Cal Kestis does in the Jedi Survivor games, but I almost feel like it's out of character for Qui-Gon to be meditating just purely for a physical benefit, that he would still be listening out for the will of the Force. And sure, his first line in The Phantom Menace is literally telling Obi-Wan to stay in the moment, so he wouldn't be doing that in this moment, but at the same time, he wouldn't be the first Jedi to teach in the style of.
To do as I say, not as I do.
And this isn't me saying that Qui-Gon isn't a great Jedi. I think he's everything a Jedi is supposed to be, but part of that is listening to the will of the Force. So even in this moment where he's fighting against a Sith Lord and has to stay in the moment, the Force can still tell him something and he will listen to it. But if it's going to lead to the kind of reaction you get when the shields go up, it's got to be something pretty big to get that reaction. So if the Force is trying to tell him something in this moment, then what is it? Is it that he's fighting the apprentice of the Sith and that Palpatine is Maul's master? I mean, maybe it's trying to tell him that he shouldn't buy property on Alderaan. Or maybe the Force wants Qui-Gon to go to Gamblers Anonymous, even. Yeah, I'm not sitting for that intervention. So, assuming the Force, like me, doesn't want to be sitting there for that intervention, then let's try to think about how it gives messages. It can show the future, but even the most experienced Jedi have to be careful about looking into these premonitions too much.
One often meets his destiny on the road he takes to avoid it.
That's such a great quote. I imagine Master Oogway and Master Yoda would have a lot of fun together, but let's look at some premonitions here in Star Wars, where Anakin has his visions of Padme dying in childbirth, but then he sets off those events that lead to her dying in childbirth. So he kind of sets off the events that lead to his premonition there. Luke has his own visions in Empire Strikes Back of Han and Leia being in danger in Cloud City, but that's just a trap by Vader there, so again, he's misreading his premonition. I mean, Ahsoka kind of has a situation where she sees an attempt on Padme's life as she's giving a speech, but even then, she kind of, changes where Padme is giving the speech from, which kind of ends up making her more vulnerable to being attacked. So, with Jedi reacting to these premonitions, most of the time it just doesn't really work out very well for them. So, my first thought to get an answer to this was to look at the novelization for The Phantom Menace written by Terry Brooks. But the problem with this part of the chapter is it's from Obi-Wan's point of view, so we don't really know what Qui-Gon is thinking as he's meditating. Qui-Gon knelt in meditation. He was gathering himself for a final assault, bringing himself in tune with the Force. Obi-Wan did not like the weariness he saw in the slump of the older man's shoulders, in the bow of his back. So in this moment of meditation, Obi-Wan just seems to think that Qui-Gon is just getting tired because he's old, but if it's something else, something that the Force is showing him, this could be him being demoralized, and then as he's pulled back to the moment, then he fights with even more intensity, which doesn't really seem like something he would be able to do if he was just too tired and too old to continue fighting Maul on his own. So we're looking for a moment in the future from the point of view of the Phantom Menace that is unclear and can simultaneously demoralize and light a fire under Qui-Gon Jinn. And I think there's really only one answer for that. Yes, this is the moment I think that Qui-Gon sees while he's meditating, because he has an attachment to Anakin already. He believes he's the chosen one and that he will restore balance. But without the context of what's happening on Mustafar, it throws him off balance. Instead of waiting for Obi-Wan so that the two of them can fight Maul together, he rushes forward and lets himself be put into a trap. Now, I hear you saying it's still a fight. They're trapped together. Maul is just as trapped. And yes, that's true. However, Qui Gon uses Form 5 Gem So, which is better in more open spaces, which they are definitely not in at this moment. It also has a weakness for practitioners of Form 7 Juyo, especially dark side users like Darth Maul, who use it particularly aggressively. So Qui Gon has nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and no Obi Wan to help him. So, do I think this was just Qui Gon making a mistake? Too aggressive in his fight here? Yes and no. I think you can see in his face when he gets stabbed in the gut by Maul that, like, he knows he's made a mistake, but I think he also has a moment of clarity here, as he's already begun training with the wills, so he knows he'll be able to continue on in some capacity, not fully a force ghost, but he knows he'll be able to continue after his death. I think he just realizes in this moment it was the will of the force that does not want him to be the one to train Anakin Skywalker. So, even with this moment of clarity, though, he still wants Anakin to learn what he knows. He doesn't lose faith in what he believes just because he's going to die. And in the next moment, he gets to see Obi-Wan and Maul continue to duel and see just how great of a Jedi Obi-Wan really is. So, in his mind, he's like, hey, maybe me dying is what needed to happen for Anakin to not end up being burned alive on Mustafar. Maybe I'm not the right person to train Anakin Skywalker. Obi-Wan Kenobi is. Now, Qui-Gon is obviously wrong that Obi-Wan is the right man to train him, but, you know, if this is what he's asking, is he right or wrong about himself? If you ask George Lucas, obviously the answer is that Qui-Gon was the master that Anakin needed, but the seeds were always there. The Jedi Council's view on attachment is very narrow, but they're also not totally wrong about Anakin because he does fall and become Vader. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I don't really see a world where the 4 or 5 most important moments in Anakin's life are really that different if it's Qui Gon there instead of Obi Wan. I mean, sure, it helps having a more sure of themselves father figure, but Anakin does grow to view Obi-Wan as a father figure, but he still has the range of emotions where one day he's his hero and the next he's his worst enemy. Just don't see a world where Anakin doesn't keep everything close to the chest still as he goes from nobody understands me to only this person gets me. So there really would be no changes to Attack of the Clones, really. It's like he still guards Padme by himself, goes to Tatooine to try to save his mother, and slaughters the Tusken Raiders, so I can't see any of that changing. Maybe during the Clone Wars he doesn't take Ahsoka on as his Padawan, but the Council could still want to do that, and Qui Gon isn't against the Master Padawan relationship, so it could still result in her expulsion and that rift being created between the Council and Anakin, which, if he isn't taking Qui Gon's lessons the right way, could be even greater than it is with Obi Wan as his mentor. And then you get to Revenge of the Sith, and Palpatine is still going to find a way to isolate Anakin from everybody in his life. So he's going to be sending Qui Gon off somewhere else, and he'll still fall to the dark side most likely, even if he is taking Qui Gon's lessons, just because of how desperate and isolated he really is in Revenge of the Sith. Except now the difference is instead of Obi Wan fighting him, it's Qui Gon Jinn. And that does help Vader in this case too. I think he then defeats Qui Gon, but either way, it doesn't look the same as the battle, so even if Qui-Gon does win, we may never get Vader in the suit. It might just be Anakin reaching his full potential and being on the dark side of the Force. So at the end of the day, I don't think the Force wanted Qui-Gon Jinn to be Anakin Skywalker's master, so it showed him a message that would throw him off and ensure his death at the hands of Maul. To show him that message of, if you continue on this path, it will end with Anakin burning on Mustafar. Or maybe as he was dying, he saw Anakin overestimate his power and then sees Obi-Wan chop Maul in half because Maul's just staring at him. And then he's like, okay, yeah, Obi-Wan will make sure he doesn't try it with somebody who has the high ground. Obi-Wan knows the importance of the high ground. High ground! Anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know in the comments down below what you think Qui-Gon could have seen in this moment as he was meditating, or if the Force was even involved at all. Whenever the Force is involved, there's always the question of predestination or free will. Here, it's probably a bit of both, and with that, would Anakin have fallen to the dark side if Qui-Gon was his master? Obviously, I think so, but let me know in the comments what you think of that also. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video today, subscribe if you want more like this, and I'll see you next time on STV.